I just did. I just hit record.
Are you too?
Okay, what we're
Yeah.
going to do is we are going to learn how to analyze graphs by looking at their zeros and that, remember the left and the right behavior and factoring it, finding the zero. So let's take a look at this first example. Okay. If you were to factor this to find the zeros, what would you first do?
Take out x squared.
Take
No,
an
just
x,
x.
just an x,
Just an
and you
x,
get
just an
x squared plus x minus 12. Now what? Anybody? Can this factor anymore?
Yeah, maybe. 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 And then 3. Yes, it could. I knew that.
Yes, it could. What two numbers multiply to give you negative 12 but add to be 1 would be 4, negative 3. Okay, so this is asking you to write each polynomial in factored form. This answers that question. Write it in factored form. But if you had this problem, if it were set equal to 0, it would now be an equation. And what do we do with equations? We solve them. So if I asked you, what are the zeros of this if it was equal to 0?
And negative 4.
0, negative 4, and 3.
Oh,
Okay, so now, what does that mean? That means, see this polynomial? It's going to have 3 zeros. And can you tell me, based on what we learned the other day, what's the left and right behavior going to look like? It's a 3. So how many turns will there be? There's going to be 2 turns. And the left side's going to be going down and the right side's going to be going up. How do I know that?
Because it's a positive.
Because the leading coefficient's positive, it's a positive 1, so the left side's going to be going down and the right side's going to be going up. Now, what I now know, this is how I'm going to analyze the graphs, is if I were to sketch a graph of this, I know my zeros are negative 4, 0, and 3. Let's pretend like those are my 3 zeros. My graph is going to be going through negative 4, it's going to be going through 0, and it's going to be going through 3. Now, how high up are we going, or how low are we going? That's when you're going to do on the back page, I'm going to show you how to actually plug numbers in and figure out how high it's going. But right now, we know the basic shape of this. The left side's going down and the right side's going up. And I know it's going through these 3 zeros, so it'd have to be going through negative 4, through 0, and back up through 3. Everyone got that? Okay, let's try another one. B. What would I take out, how would I factor this one?
7.
Take out a 7x, you're left with x squared minus 1. Now, can I factor x squared minus 1?
No.
Yeah, you can. X minus 1 times x plus 1. Remember that? It's the difference of 2 perfect squares. So the question that they asked you is to just factor it. Factoring it would give you just this answer right here. But if I set this equal to 0, can you give me the 3 zeros?
0, 1, 0,
0, 1, and negative 1. So now, again, this is a cubic function. It's going to have 2 terms, and the leading coefficient's 7. So I know that this thing's going to be coming, the 3 zeros are negative 1, 0, and 1. So this is what my graph basically is going to look like. Something like that. Now, how high is it going to go between negative 1 and 0? I'd have to plug in a number, like negative 0.5. And how low between 0 and 1? I'd have to plug in 0.5 to see how low it went. Cause it could be going like, woo, like that, like this, I don't know. Anything more than what I have here, the dots, the zeros, and the shape, that's all I know unless I plug in some numbers, yeah.
If you were to plug in a number, would it go in place with 0?
If you were to plug in a number like 0.5,
Yeah.
you'd plug it right here. 0.5 cubed times 7 minus 7 times 0.5.
Okay.
And that's your y, that would be your y value right here. Okay? So, check out example 2. This just tells you exactly what I told you with respect to your function, your zeros. Your, right here, if I asked you to find the zeros, this is what we just did. What would be the zeros? It's already factored for you.
2, 1, negative 4.
Okay, those are your 3 zeros. Everyone cool with that? So this is gonna look like this. It's gonna go through -4, it's gonna go through 1, and it's gonna go through 2. Okay, it's gonna cross through these 3 zeros. Now, how do I know if it's gonna come down or go this, how do I know if it's going this way or this way? Well, what I would have to do to figure it out is I would have to FOIL, multiply these out. The only thing I really care about is the leading coefficient.
Cubed.
So it's gonna be based on common sense here. If I multiply x times x, I get x squared. And then if I multiply this, I'm gonna get x
Cube.
cubed. So I know that my leading coefficient is a positive number and my degree is it's a 3. So this is basically what my graph is gonna look like. Now how do I find everything else? Well, to find where it hits the y-axis, I plug 0 in for x. And how do I find any other points? I would probably put in a -2, and I'd probably put in a 1.5 if I wanted to see how low it's gonna go and how high. And that's what we're gonna do in a minute. Let's try another one. Can you tell me my 3 zeros?
0.
0, 3, negative 5.
3 and -5. So, again, if I multiply this all out, I get x cubed and it's a +1. So it's gonna tell me that my graph is gonna, the smallest of these 3 zeros is -5. And then we have 0, and then we have a 3. So what's happening here is it's gonna go like this. Now, how high is this thing going? We don't know. What I need to do is probably plug in, what number would you plug in?
Like 4.
Now, if you wanna be totally awesome, you could plug -1, -2, -3, -4 in. If you wanna do just average, -3. I would do -3, it's right in the middle. Now, when I say plug -3 in, where are you gonna plug it? Nick asked that question. You're gonna plug -3 here, here, and here. So if I plug -3 in, -3 times, what's -3 minus 3 is -6, and -3 plus 5 is 2. You'd have to multiply these out, you get 18,
Negative 12 times negative
36. So guess how high this thing goes?
36.
To 36. It's pretty high. So this thing's going woo, really high.
Wait, how did you do that?
You plug -3. -3 is your x value. It would go here. -3 minus 3 is -6. And then -3 plus 5 is 2. You multiply
Okay.
these 3 together and you get 36.
Okay.
Same with here, from 0 to 3, what number would you choose?
2.
A 1 or a 2,
1.
and that's gonna tell you how low. You put a 1 or a 2 in here. We're gonna do that in a minute, okay? All right, check out example 3. How do you find, they want you to find the zeros. What should you do to find the zeros?
Factor.
Factor it. What comes first? GCF. You're gonna pull out an x, and you get x squared minus 2x minus 15. Everyone should be able to factor this. How do you factor x squared minus 2x minus 15?
5 and negative 5 and 3.
Negative 5 and 3. So, can you tell me the zeros?
0.
0,
5 and negative.
5, and negative 3. What do you notice about these zeros? They're what compared to this number? They're the opposite. Very good. And we're going to talk about that in a second. So, can you tell me the shape of this thing? It's going to go through negative 3. It's going to rise, I don't know how far, but it's going to go through 0.
And that's it.
And then it's going to come back up through, what's this number? 5. Now, what if there were a negative in front?
Then
What would
direction
be-
of the right and left would be.
Yes,
left
it would be
going
coming
up.
down this way and going up and coming down the other way, okay? So basically, what we just talked about, this factor theorem, if x minus a is a factor, then if x minus a, so if x minus 2 is a factor, what would be the 0? What would be the 0? It'd be 2, right?
Yeah.
So if x minus a is a factor, a would be your 0. That's what this says. So check this out. If 2 is a 0, how would you write that in factored form?
Minus.
X minus 2. If negative 3 is a factor, how would you write that?
X plus
X
3.
plus 3. So if I gave you a picture,
Figure kind should be fine.
if I gave you a picture of something, and I went like this, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Going through 0,
I'll make this,
6,
4.
I heard 6 first. We'll make that 6.
6,
We'll make this negative 4 and make this 0. Could you write this in factored form for me?
Yeah.
What would you write?
Y
X
X
plus 4,
plus 4
x minus 6.
X. for that one, and x minus 6. Now, what's wrong with this answer is there needs to be a negative 1 out in front, because it's
The right is going
rising.
down, left is
Now, if it were going the other way, if it were this way, like
Then
that,
it's like
you
that.
wouldn't need that there, okay? So that's how you would write it in factored form. Easy?
Yep.
So now, I'm gonna give you exactly what we just did. If I tell you, if you have a cubic function and I give you the 3 zeros, how would I write this in factored form? And don't forget writing y or f of x. What would you write? How would you write the negative 2 one?
Plus X plus
Mm-hmm. How about this one?
2. X minus 2.
And how about this one? Okay, now, they want you to write it in standard form. This is in factored form. So you gotta know how to FOIL. But check out, pair these two up right here. You recognize what these two are right here? If you were to multiply,
Perfect square.
yeah.
So it's
So these two really quickly factor to be
4x
x squared minus 4. And now don't forget you have your x minus 3. So how are you gonna factor this? You do x squared times x, which is x cubed. X squared times negative 3, negative 3x squared. Then minus 4x, and then plus 12. And that would be this would be the polynomial in standard form, given that you had these 3 zeros. So if you want to write f of x, or if you want to write y, I don't care. Okay? Let's try the next one. We have a quartic function, which means the degree is 4. And these are your zeros. So how would you write this? F of x, x plus 3, x plus 2, x plus 1, and x minus 2. Now, we have to multiply this whole thing out, let's be smart. Are any two of them easy to do?
Yeah,
Which
x
two?
plus 2, x minus 2.
These two right here, if we multiplied them out, what would you get? X squared minus 4, easy? Now, could you all factor the x plus 3, x plus 1 in your head? Would you know how to do it?
Wait.
X times x?
X plus x squared plus.
4x, go ahead, Nick,
X
plus
squared plus 4x plus 3.
plus 3, good, so you did it in your head. You did it in your head. Now what you'd have to do, this is where it's
Do it
a
all over
mess.
again.
You have to multiply, because if you are asked to write it in standard form, you gotta do x squared, what's x squared times x squared?
X
Just
cubed.
cube.
X what?
Or not cube,
X
y
X to the
before it.
4. Remember, it's a quartic.
Oh, I'm thinking of it.
Quartic, x to the 4th. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. What's x squared times 4x?
4x
cubed.
4x cubed. And x squared times 3 is 3x squared. Now we gotta do negative 4. Negative 4 times x squared is negative 4x squared, minus 16x, and then minus 12. Should we do anything to this problem?
Like terms.
Cancel
Yeah,
x squared
let's
is
simplify.
negative 4x squared.
A lot of work. So this is the polynomial that has these 4 zeros. That's the polynomial associated with this function that has those exact zeros. So now, I'm gonna show you, I kind of already showed you. I already showed you this, so this should be easy. If you're asked to graph this, can you tell me your zeros? What are they?
3,
1,
negative
3, and negative 2. What you need to do, these are your x-intercepts. These are your zeros. You're going to put a dot at 1, a dot at 3, and a dot at negative 2. So let's do that down here. A dot at negative 2, a dot at 1, and a dot at 3. 1, 2, 3. Did I do that right? Yes, I did. Right?
Yeah.
Negative 2, 1, and 3. Now I'm going to look at my equation. If I multiplied these out, like I did up here, you know how I multiplied them all out? Is my first term going to be a positive coefficient? X times, it's going to be x to the 3rd, and that's going to be a positive 1. So what do I know about the left and the right behavior?
2. Right, will be going up.
It's going to look something like this. It's going to look do you agree? I'm going to do it really light.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to look like. Now, how do I know
What?
between these two zeros? How do I know if it's not going here or here? How do I know how high I'm going to go?
You
can-
don't.
What numbers would be the ones I want to, should I put a negative 10 in?
Like a negative 1.
No, a negative 1 and what else? A 0. So would you say we're going to do a negative 1, a 0? What other numbers? How far
2.
down am I going to
2.
go? I'm going to do a 2. Now watch how easy these are.
Gazoons have
Thank you.
And this is what the question Sammy had asked. Where do you plug it in? You plug it in, or Nick, you asked this one. You plug negative 1, I would plug it in right here. So if you plug negative 1, what's negative 1 minus 1? Negative 2 times, what's negative 1 minus 3? Negative 4, and negative 1 plus 2 is 1. Now multiply those three together, what do you get? 8. So over 1 and up 8. So that's where you should go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
You're almost close.
So right there. So now it's going to go up. Now I don't know, it might go even higher up before it hits the y-axis. I don't know. Let's check it out. Let's plug 0 in. What's 0 minus 1? Negative 1. What's 0 minus 3? Negative 3. And 0 plus 2 is 2. Multiply these, you get 6. So over 0, the y-intercept is 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it went to this, and then it came down. Okay? So it's coming down, it's coming from the left, it's going up, it's reaching this point, and then it's coming down right here. Okay? So now, it's gonna come back down, pick up this 0. Now, how far down are we gonna go? We're gonna plug in 2. Let's check out 2. If you plug a 2 right here, what's 2 minus 1? 1. What's 2 minus 3?
-1.
-1. And what's 2 plus 2? 4. Multiply those, you get
-4.
-4. So over 2 and down 1, 2, 3. So I should have went down here and then shoot back up, and you're good. That's an A+ graph. Does this make sense? Is there anyone lost? Anyone not get this? Anyone have any questions? Okay, so now with that in mind,
I got no factor.
you gotta know how to factor, Nick. How are you gonna factor this one?
GC first.
What can you take out? How about a negative
Negative
x? How about a negative x?
Sure.
And then you're left with x squared plus x minus 6. Now, how do you factor this one?
-3 and, no, +3, -2.
Yep,
+3.
+3, -2. So what are your 3 zeros? 0,
Zero.
0.
-3, and
two.
+2. Let's put a dot at 0, -3, and +2. Now, what's the shape of this? What is it gonna look like?
It's gonna go
The
down.
right goes down.
It's gonna go like that, right? Right? Because that's a
Right.
negative. So it's going to be going like, something like this. What are we gonna do now? What number are you gonna plug in? -2, -1, and probably 1. -2, -1, and 1. Now, what could I expect to come out with numbers like those? What do you think -2 and -1 are gonna give me? A positive or a negative? Common sense. A negative. It's down, it's coming down based on the shape. And when I plug 1 in, I should get a positive. And if I don't, what do I know? Made a mistake. So let's do this. Let's plug these numbers in. Where am I gonna plug -2 in? You have an option. If you prefer this equation, you may do so, but make sure you cube that number first and then multiply it by -1. Do the order correctly. I think this is the easiest place to plug them in.
Cubes though.
I think it's, does anyone else agree that that would be the
I
easiest?
agree.
I think. So now, what you're gonna do is plug -2 in here. What's a negative -2? It's a positive 2. 2 times, what's -2 plus 3? 1. And they're gonna be numbers like this. -2 minus 2 is -4. So what number do you get when you multiply those?
-8.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
It does. How about -1? -1 with the negative there is gonna be a positive 1,
Times
and then times it by what? 2, and then times it by -3, I get -6. Yeah.
I'm confused. How'd you get -2, -1, and 1?
How did we get these 3 numbers right here? Okay, we look at our zeros. We know these 3 are our zeros. So I wanna plug numbers that are between -3 and 0, and it'd be -2 and -1.
So it's just any number between 0 and -3?
So the only ones that are integers are -1 and -2, yeah.
Okay.
Like, I really don't care what happens out here, because my graph is shooting up. So I'm not gonna pick any numbers here. I'm going in
Did it.
I need to see what's happening in between these 2 numbers. And same with this, I wanna know what's happening between these 2. What number's between 0 and 2? 1. You get it now?
Mhm.
What did you get when you plugged 1 in? 1, so you have -1 times 4 times -1, and you get 4. You are correct. So let's plot these points. Over 2, down 8. So I didn't go far enough down. So 2, -8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then -1, -6. And then 1, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So here's my picture. Come down, up, pick that up, and that's a really nice graph.
A plus graph.
A+ graph. Anybody have any questions on this? Okay, flip this over. Almost there. Okay, so, check this out. What are your zeros?
Oh, yeah, she did it.
X equals 4, X equals -1/2, and X equals -2. Now, each of these zeros, see this? What's happening here is you have, this is what you have. You have X minus 4, 2X plus 1. You have X plus 2. You have X plus 2, and you have X plus 2. See this 0? It occurred 3 times. But we can't go through this 0 3 times. Can't go through it 3 times. Okay, so each of these zeros has what we call a multiplicity. There's 2 things that can happen at a 0. There's 2 things that can happen. It can go through, you can go through a 0, and what you could do is you could touch a 0 and bounce off of it and not go through it. So how do I know if a graph is gonna go through a 0 or if it's gonna touch it and bounce right off of it? Well, if the degree of the 0 is an odd number, we say its multiplicity is odd. And if it's odd, it's gonna go through it. If it's an even degree, it touches and it's gonna bounce off of it. So if the degree, this 0 would have an even multiplicity, it's gonna touch at that 0 and bounce off of it. It bounces off, B-O-U-N-C.
Bounce.
Bounces off. It bounces off of it. This is gonna be an odd degree, odd multiplicity. It's gonna cross right through it. It's gonna cross through it. So, if you look at these 3 zeros, all 3 of these are odd. This is a 1, this is a 1, and this is a 3. They're all odd. So in this picture, it's gonna cross through all these zeros, okay?
How are they all odd? It's a 4, it's a 2.
This is a 1,
No, she's talking about the.
this is a 1,
Oh.
and this is a 3. So the degree of the 0 is gonna have a multiplicity. So what's gonna happen, think of this as -1/2, and actually we have -2 here, and we have 4. So what's gonna happen is our graph, this is a degree of 5. It's gonna come through here, it's gonna come through here, and it's gonna come through here. Now, it may do something like this. Because the degree is 5, this thing could have 3 turns. No, I'm sorry, not 3. This one has, I did 2.
4.
It could have 4 turns, right? So it could look like this. It could go like this.
Keep going.
It could go like this, like that, okay? And only touch at those zeros. Like, let's say that's the x-axis right here. These are your zeros. So in other words, there could be some imaginary ones, okay? Don't worry about that right now. But check out this one. This one, what are the zeros? 0, -5, and 3/4. Each of these zeros has a multiplicity of 1. So it's gonna cross through each of them like we did on the other page. It's gonna cross through, it's gonna go through -5, it's gonna go through 0, and it's gonna come through 3/4. So 3/4, 0, and -5. Okay? So, this is what I just talked about. If the multiplicity of the 0 is even, the graph is gonna touch and bounce off of it. But if it's odd, it'll cross through it. You gotta know those. So let's take, these are 2 more examples and then you're on your way. Look at this one. I've got 2 zeros. This is what I have. If I were to factor this out, this is what I'd have. Okay, so we have 0, 0, 4, 4, and 4. What are your 2 zeros, you guys? 0 and 4. But this one occurred even number of times, so the multiplicity of it is even. This one occurred odd number of times. This is an odd one. If it's an even, if that 0 occurred even number of times, your graph is gonna touch and bounce off that. It's not gonna go through it,
Off of 0.
off of 0. If it's odd, it's gonna cross through it. So, looking at this is a degree of 5. What is this thing gonna look like? Probably something like this. It's probably gonna go through here, and it might be doing something like this, and going through 4,
It's gonna touch.
it's gonna,
Go through.
it
Go
touches
through
at
4.
this and it's gonna cross through here. It could do something like this. Did I do too many turns? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so I did too many turns, so it probably is gonna do something like this. There. There it is right there. It's gonna touch here, and it's gonna cross through here. So 1, 2, I have 3 turns. Yes.
So it's
No, oh,
No.
I did this wrong.
You're from
The
4
degree's
to-
5, so it's gonna be doing this. Sorry, that's wrong.
No, what's
That's
it doing?
wrong.
It's gonna be 4 to.
It's gonna
Wow.
come through here, it's the degree's odd, and then it's gonna go through and touch here. That could be 1, it's gonna touch at 0, and it's gonna go through 4. That could be 1. It could do this also, because remember, at most, there could be how many turns? Could look like this.
Why are they all under the x?
It could be 4 or 2.
It could go like
Yeah,
that.
4 to 2.
It could look like that. Now, why aren't these zeros showing up? Because they're imaginary. Now, I don't know, I'd have to type this in my calculator or further find all the zeros. But it could look, why did I touch here? Why did I come down here? Because the degree is a 5, and it's a positive. So it's coming down from the left, it's gonna touch at this one. Why is it gonna touch here? Because x equals 0 had an even multiplicity. So if the degree is even, it touches at it, it's gonna come, it's not gonna go through that, but it's gonna cross through at this 0. Why? Because this degree has an odd multiplicity. Okay? How do I know which one of these it is? I'd have to graph it. I'd have to check it out. Okay? Now, what about this one? What if it's not factored for you? What are you gonna do?
You don't factor it yourself.
What's the GCF?
X squared.
X squared. So I already know that 0 is a 0. 0 is a 0. And I know that it's gonna touch at this 0 and not cross through. Why? Because the multiplicity of this is even. But I'm not done with this. I gotta factor it. How do I factor this trinomial right here? X minus 4
I'm sorry, yeah.
and X plus 2.
That 4 wouldn't be 4, it would be 8.
Oh, 8, I'm sorry.
Negative 4 to positive.
Sorry.
You already did it.
And I did it right. My brain was going faster than my hands. Is it right now? Yeah. Sorry, I wrote 4 here, it's an 8. So now, they're asking you, state the zeros. What are the zeros?
0, 4.
0, 4, and -2. Right? Now they want the multiplicity. How many times did this 0? It's even. This is odd and odd.
So it's gonna bounce off.
Now,
the
where do
0.
these come from? The degree out here. There's an understood 1 there. So what's gonna happen at 0? It's gonna touch and bounce off of it.
It's across.
It's gonna cross through it, go right through 4, and it's gonna cross through -2. So if you were to sketch this graph, and all I want is a rough graph. Let's do a rough graph. So, this is all I need you to do for me on your homework. So the degree is 4 and the leading coefficient, it's gonna look something like that, right? Do you agree? Because the leading coefficient is a 1 and the degree is 4, so both sides have to go up. So what I wanna do is put a dot at 0, a dot at 4, this is 4, and a dot at -2, and a dot at 4. Okay, are you guys with me? 0, -2, and 4. So, it's gonna come through it's gonna cross through at -2. So it's gotta be going from this direction. Coming down, it's gonna touch here. So it's gonna go like this. It's gonna touch through here, and then it's gonna go through this one. There's your graph. See if this makes any sense to you. Both the left and the right have to be going up. It's gonna cross through, it's gotta cross through these two. And it's gotta bounce and touch. And how many turns am I gonna have? 1 degree less than this. So there's 1 turn, there's another turn, and there's 3. Does this make sense? 3 turns. 1 less than the degree. Now, how do I get a perfect graph? What I would do is plug in -1 and probably a 2 into the, I would do it right here. And that would give me a perfect graph. All I want you to do for now is just do a basic sketch. Okay? So, in questions, let me run through your homework. In questions 7 through 12, let's read the directions. It says, write each polynomial in factored form. They're not asking you for the zeros. They just want you to factor these. Does anyone know what section this is?
1,
5.2.
3, 2.
Why do you think I did 5.3 first?
So that we can have it actually
Mhm.
this.
Extra practice on factoring. So, this is like, all you do is factor it. So, let's do number 7 together. What would you take out of this? X, and you're left with x squared plus 7x plus 10. Now what would you do? How do you factor this? X plus 2 and x plus 5. Now, the question says, write each polynomial in factored form. We're done. We're done. It's not asking you to find the zeros. You don't have anything else to do. So in questions 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, you just factor it completely. Flip it over. Questions 13 through 18 are asking you to find the zeros. Guess what? It's already factored for you. What are your 2 zeros? 1 and -2. What kind of polynomial is this one? It's an x squared, it's a quadratic, and the leading coefficient's positive. All I want you to do is this. At -2, put a dot, and at 1, put a dot, and I just want the shape. Left and right and the zeros. That's all you need to do. Okay? So those are really easy. Now, 19 through 22, I accidentally typed twice. See how it says 19?
Oh, I see.
Okay, this is what I want you to do.
Also not one of them.
For the first 19 through 22, I want you to write these in factored form. Write them in factored. So you would do y equals x minus 5, x minus 6, and x minus 7, right? What I want you to do for the second 19, write them in standard form. So you'd have to FOIL. So you'd have to, and if you want to, box in this answer, that's
Do I
good.
have to rewrite that?
No, just give me the answer in factored form. You can just, keep
Yeah.
going. I don't mind. Do you know what I mean by
Yeah.
factored form, you guys? You're gonna
Got
FOIL
FOIL.
x times x and keep going, okay? And then 27 through 34, it says find the zeros, state the multiplicity. So all you do is this is already done for you. What is the 0 here? -3. Now, I want the multiplicity. It's odd, and what's it gonna do? It's gonna cross through. This is what I want you to do. Now, for question like 29, what should you first do? Factor. You're gonna do, find the zeros. So you have x, and then 2x squared plus x minus 1. Finish that one, and I want you to state each of the zeros. So you have x, and then you have plus 1 and minus 1. So your zeros are 0, 1/2, and -1. So this is odd, 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 odd,
It'll be negative 1.
huh?
Oh, no.
I wrote negative
I thought it was.
and odd. And what is it gonna do? It's gonna cross, cross, cross. Can you do that for me? Odd, this degree is odd, this degree is, now don't look at the 0. Look at how many times that 0 occurs. That's what odd means. Are you guys good with this?
Yep.
You have till, this is due Wednesday. I think you have enough time to get this done. Okay, you got like 5 minutes, you can get like half of these done right now.